Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, July 10th, 2026, and today we're talking soil block tricks to amaze your friends and please your cucurbits. I'll make the case for sunflowers everywhere from the field, and it's Feedback Friday, so let's do it. All right, happy Friday, everyone. I hope you all are doing well and feeling well and all that good stuff. The week is almost done, so if not, there's always next week. I am feeling pretty good about this morning, albeit a little sore after a long workday yesterday and then some adult pickup soccer last night, which is super fun. Probably not the smartest idea to, keep myself from being injured, but super fun. Also had a nice board meeting yesterday with the No-Till Growers Board of Directors. Loved that. Big shouts to all of them for all the work they put in. Also relevant to you all, we are trying to figure out how to improve Growers Daily and our work in general. If you have a second, which is not a Robert's Rules of Order joke, but could be, we have a survey in the show thread we'd love for you all to take, or to share some expanded thoughts. You can head to patreon.com/no-till-growers to the post that we have over there, of which you don't have to be a Patreon member to comment. You could just leave a comment over there. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyway, one of my personal favorite things about the show is when I get to see inside of your farm and garden operations when you send in a 20-second farm video clip. So to do that, all you have to do is just upload it to Dropbox or Drive and share it with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. I love to see what the audience is up to on your own properties. You all rock. Anyway, it is Friday. It's also pouring outside, but it is Friday, and which means Feedback Friday, where we explore what you all were saying about this week's topics. On Monday, we did the full fall brassica breakdown, and we're using wash pack water at SVSYTALT. I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm just going to spell it out. Anyway, they wrote, quote, "I guess I got to go plant some brassicas. I was wondering what I was going to put in the bed I just started harvesting. As far as saving the wash water, I think the calculus is how much do I need this water versus how much time/effort/money should I spend transporting and treating this wastewater. Personally, I like the idea of letting my wash water flow into the compost bin. Just set it up in the bin, close enough to your wash pack station," end quote. Yeah, and I like the idea of involving the wash water in the compost, but you do have to control it to some extent. Like if compost gets too wet, it can, the nutrients can leach out in the soil, some of the nitrogen and other things, but it can also, cool it down, like in the middle of the heating process. If it's in that thermophilic stage and you pour too much water in, then it will actually stop the composting process. So maybe having the option to run it into the compost would be a good use. At Tim Hammond wrote that day, quote, "I always get depressed when you start talking about seasonality. In zone 2A, we had a cool spring and everything is 2 or 3 weeks behind where it should be. Now we've got 65 days left until our first average hard frost. My peas are just beginning to bloom. The cabbage and broccoli still haven't started heading. The squash are just starting to recover from transplant shock. The only thing I'm confident I'm going to harvest this year is radishes and potatoes," end quote. And oof, I can't imagine growing in 2A, except that I would almost certainly focus my efforts on tunnel production. Not sure, obviously, by this comment how much you rely on a tunnel, but that would take you up a whole ag zone just without even any heating. Then for the field, stuff like potatoes and radishes should do fine. And then you can concentrate things like squash or whatever in your tunnel. Lettuces, carrots, onions, that sort of stuff should do fine outside too. But you probably also get crazy amounts of sunlight this time of year, especially there like June through July. So I would imagine that stuff in the tunnel would just absolutely jam for you. Best of luck on the rest of the season. On Tuesday, we talked about that super El Nino, when pathways get out of hand, and we did an in the field interplant visit. At Cherry Parfait wrote, quote, "I like this interplanting. My main space for an early planting of spinach has been on the outside edges of pepper and tomato beds. Of course, I tried the alyssum last year and it self-seeded nicely. Wasn't in the way at all," end quote. And I don't know if that last part is supposed to be, a little facetious, but it could be. It does self-seed pretty well. I've started to use it like every other year, not because of the self-seeding so much, but because it does tend to harbor some brassica pests, so I don't want to necessarily propagate those. Anyway, I do also do something similar with carrots to what you were talking about with the spinach, where I'm planting those well before I plant tomatoes. Then I plant the tomatoes in the middle. Then I pull the carrots, or in your case, the spinach, and then I can actually get even another interplant in there of lettuce and beets before the tomatoes really even start producing. Yeah, like all of that before I get a single tomato. Of course, that would be hard to do in the field because you can't plant carrots in our zone in the field in like January, like I do in the tunnel, but maybe a round of early radishes or spinach makes sense as they do better in colder soils, and then tomatoes down the middle. I asked for show feedback that day, and like I said, you can still put that up over the post on Patreon, but at Johnny Bravo wrote, quote, field sessions are fun. I don't know if it's possible for you to get a different mic or just audio balance, but the volume was way lower, so it was really loud when you came back to the office, end quote. Thanks, and I appreciate the feedback. I can't really improve the mic so much. It's actually a new mic for the GoPro that we just recently bought, but we can make sure to pay better attention to the audio balance and to which way I'm talking to the mic. Anyway, always feel free to let us know when something is unpleasant like that, or something you like or something you don't like. It's helpful to us. On Wednesday, I went live and talked, well, a million and one things because I was live. One of those things was manure and the 90-120 day rule, and at Philiflom asked, quote, does the 90-120 day rule apply to actively aerated compost teas with manure in them? Like if I did a bed flip for lettuce, I laid compost out, I raked it in, then hit the whole bed with a compost tea that used chicken manure in it before planting lettuce. Should that lettuce no longer be eaten? End quote. So there really is two parts to this question. Does the rule still apply in that situation, and should it be eaten? So yes, 100%, if you're selling the produce and or are certified organic and you sprayed a tea that has raw, non-composted by the composting guidelines, chicken manure in it, the 90-120 day rule would still apply, meaning you would not be able to sell that lettuce. If the manure you used had been properly composted following the guidelines, then you're good to go. Now, whether or not you want to eat it is up to you. In general, you don't want raw chicken manure around things that you're going to eat raw, even if, or perhaps especially if it's been aerated. Who knows if you increase the populations of those pathogens. Chicken manure is a big pathogen vector, in particular of E. coli and salmonella, neither of which you are going to want to get sick from, or definitely get anyone else sick from. It's not pretty. Food safety is paramount always. The live was a lot of fun, as it always is. Really appreciate you all coming and hanging out. Then on Thursday, we talked to blackstrap molasses in the garden, what to look for in a tunnel, and did a little Florida weave demo out in the field at the Homemade Homestead. And Garden asked, quote, great video as always, some of the very best gardening information on the tube. Do you prune your field tomatoes? I reduced my pruning last year, and so no difference in the field, and I'm not pruning at all this year, end quote. Great question, and no, we absolutely do not prune our field tomatoes at all, because they are significantly more prone to blight and weather issues. We do the least amount of work possible on them, otherwise their value tanks. Ideally, it's plant, string, mow the paths, and then harvest. Otherwise, they just don't make any money. At John Rozier wrote, quote, thanks for doing these in the field demonstrations. That seems to be a good addition to the Daily Show. The Florida weave seems to go a lot quicker than all tomato cages that I built by hand this year. Someone had given me a big roll of steel mesh, so that was free, but a lot of labor went into building them. Keep up the good work. I appreciate all that goes into the Daily Show, end quote. Indeed, we did the cages when we were apprenticing, and to be sure, it was effective, and there are things to like about, using the cages, but pounding hundreds of stakes and then putting on and taking off hundreds of cages was a lot. Then you have to also store them over the winter or get them out of the way somehow. So you have to have a lot of space for that. And you have to sort of encourage the plants, like keep them in the cages themselves as they grow up to a certain stage, which is just a lot of labor. But the plants did well like that, relatively speaking. So it's not a bad system, just it's a little intensive. On tunnels, at Bundlekeeper asked, quote, we have an unfinished high tunnel that keeps tearing plastic. Any tips on getting it covered easily without ripping in half, end quote. And dang, that's a bummer. The big thing is to make sure to tape over any sharp edges, imperfections in the metal, or any iffy joints. Usually kits come with some amount of UV treated tape, but if not, you'll have to buy some of your own. That will make the biggest difference, just making sure that there are no sharp edges. I'm assuming that's why the plastic was ripping, unless you're using some random plastic that is not made for high tunnels, which I doubt, but just in case someone has that idea, to just grab whatever clear plastic is at Lowe's or whatever. Those plastics do not tend to be robust and will disintegrate in the sun if they are not UV treated. So many good comments that day and all week, y'all. Thank you. Very fun stuff as always. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, cucurbits, soil blocks, and life. BRB. That'd be a good podcast. Maybe I'll start the cucurbits, soil blocks, and life podcast. Never know. I got all this time on my hands.
Farmer Claire Coleman here from the Winter Growers Podcast. Did you know that I also founded Real Farmer Care, a nonprofit that supports farmer well-being? From my own experiences farming, I knew firsthand that this type of support was missing from ag, so I decided to do something about it. As of today, there are over 500 farmer recipients of a $100 self-care award, with more applying daily. If you'd like to help, each $100 donated supports one new farmer. Visit realfarmercare.com to donate and learn more. Again, that's realfarmercare.com.
A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I'll always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Tony Onshoots. I still have no idea if that's how you say your name, Tony, but I think it has to have almost like an exclamation point at the end. Anyway, Tony Onshoots writes, quote, "Hey Jesse, I know you're a big fan of soil blocks, and so am I. I use 2-inch soil blocks for almost all of my seeding. On many of my cucurbits, the roots start to exit the soil block pretty quickly. I like to transplant them in the ground as soon as possible, and I don't usually pot them up. On your recent episode, you mentioned that they hate having their roots disturbed. What could I do with my soil blocks to avoid disturbing the roots as little as possible? Thanks," end quote. All right, thanks, Tony. And a good question here, perhaps for those of you who are still starting summer squashes and cucurbits, or maybe even sneaking in, some delicatas or something late for the fall. Cucumbers are finicky things. They have some of the most sensitive root systems of any crops we grow, so it can be difficult to propagate anything in the cucurbit family from seed, or I guess difficult is not the word necessarily. You just have to be thoughtful about it, because otherwise, they do fine from seed, just do not disturb their roots. Most crops don't love their roots disturbed. That's not really a surprise. But cucurbits in particular will take a serious hit, often resulting in these like wilted leaves or even just straight up death if, for instance, you mash the soil block into the ground at planting or drop them or whatever, or really just even touch them too much. That is enough root disturbance to cause serious damage, which could make them susceptible to pests or whatever. So anyway, there are some easy solutions here. I use the wind strip trays now, but you don't have to purchase anything special. I grew cucurbits in soil blocks for years before ever trying the wind strips, and I did one of two things. The first and the easiest thing to do with those 2-inch blocks is to simply separate them on the tray. So you make a row of the blocks and then you just physically separate them. This really makes the most sense if you can bottom water them, but give them as much space between blocks as you can. Using the hand blocker, I would just make one round and individually, like I said, separate each block, then seed each block. Now, again, they dry out faster when they're separated, so bottom watering is absolutely preferred here, but that's an easy solution, though it will take up more space in the greenhouse with fewer plants on each tray. One tip, though, is that there cannot be any soil chilling out between like the blocks. Like you can't just have dropped a little soil in between each of those blocks that you separated. You will have to lightly spray that out just to make sure there's no soil that the roots can crawl through and touch the other blocks, because they'll do that. They don't really understand what we're going for here. The other option is to go straight into soil balls or bells or larger soil blocks and do that same thing. Make sure the blocks are not touching and then there's no soil in between them. But by starting with the bigger blocks, you don't have to disturb the roots at all when you go to pot them up, like you might in the spring with other cucurbits. And that's really it. The only other things to say about it are to protect your cucurbits from rodents when germinating. I usually just throw an extra tray over top and or keep them on a card table with metal legs that they can't climb. You may also need to protect them from cucumber beetles with insect netting, but that is usually only when you have poor quality soil mix. If it's a good mix, they should be healthy enough to, attract pests in my experience, but it can happen that the cucumbers are just not lively enough and they attract some pests. You may also want to have some fish hydrolysate on hand to keep them happy both in the tray and after you plant. The last thing is to be very gentle at planting. Dig the hole, set the block in, water it in really, really well, and lightly cover it with some sort of insect netting. Like I tend to crush the blocks when I'm in a hurry, especially with things like lettuce, but you cannot do that with cucurbits. Otherwise, I think that's all I got for cukes in the soil blocks. Let us know what you all do. For the moment, we're going to take one last quick break and then head to the field to show some love to the sunflowers in our lives. Be right back.
Want to harvest seeds adapted to your farm, but you're thinking, look, I have a market farm to run. I'm way too busy weeding and picking tomatoes. I'm Dan Brisebois, and I'm here to tell you that you can grow seed on your farm without losing your mind. On the Seed Farmer podcast, and in my book, The Seed Farmer, I share exactly how busy growers make seed crops work alongside a bustling farm business. Find The Seed Farmer wherever you get your books and podcasts. Go grow some seeds.
All right, so at some point I will do a whole show on sunflowers, from microgreens to cut flowers to cover crops and seeds and oils and all the things. They are one of my favorite crops and one of the more versatile in general. But today I thought I would just take you into the field to talk a little bit about how we're currently using sunflowers in the garden. So enjoy.
Okay, so one thing that's really noticeable about our farm if you come here is that we have all these patches of sunflowers. So you can see some here, there's some here, there's some in this milpa patch down here, there's some way out there. And we love sunflowers. I have like quite a lot of affection for sunflowers for a number of reasons. One, and I'll do like a whole crop breakdown of sunflowers at some point, because I think there's a few different varieties. You have like sunflowers for seeds, you have sunflowers for cutting, and then I guess you could probably have like sunflowers for just for beneficials. So let's start there. One of the things that I love about sunflowers, and we grow a big variety of different sunflowers, is the beneficials. Bees use sunflowers medicinally, so they're really good for native bees and honeybees. And you see a lot of little things in there too that I don't know what they are, but many beneficials really love sunflowers. So there's that. That's one thing I really love about them. For the soil, in the spots that we put them, they put down a huge, really deep taproot, so they do a really good job of cycling nutrients from deep, of breaking up compaction. And although they can be kind of hard to get rid of, like, there's a lot of biomass there to deal with, and it's really woody biomass. It's really good for just breaking up your soil, adding that carbon into the soil, and getting those nutrients to kind of come up, not just up here where these things are like, those up there have got to be 10 feet tall. But, not only there, but also just in the soil, you get a lot of biomass there. Another thing sunflowers are kind of known for is like bioremediation. So they are good at bioaccumulating things like heavy metals and other toxins. You obviously wouldn't want to eat seeds or whatever from that, but you could, remove that material. So if you had a place that you wanted to bioremediate, you could actually remove that material to another place or to the dump, I guess, or, you can talk to an extension agent about how to deal with it. But you could remove something like lead out of your soil using something like sunflowers, which is cool. Another thing about the soil element of them is they make mycorrhizal associations. So like if you want to keep your mycorrhizal fungi fed and happy, using sunflowers is also a really cool option there. Even if you just have them in spots around the garden, I like them on the ends of beds. Like we've even got one just sort of randomly growing over here by the onions. We've got some over in our burn pile where we have a really beautiful lush patch of Johnson grass and sunflowers. Yeah, and then of course in the milpa patch, so that's around the corn and the beans and the squash and stuff that's over there. So that's really nice to have those in there. And also on the seed front, like in terms of crops, right, you can grow the ones that are for cut flowers and you can grow the ones for seed. We do a little of both. For us, the ones, like you can see, the ones that are really for seed are like this giant monster here. This is going to be a really good seed one. We don't really save a lot of seed on them. We save enough to grow them every year, but we don't save a ton. But one of the things I love, and you can see it's sort of happening here, is they attract my favorite bird, or at least my favorite bird in terms of how they fly, which is the gold finch. Love the way the gold finch flies. It flies like and you can see where they were eating here, it flies like a dolphin. It's maybe not my favorite overall bird, but in terms of watching it fly, aesthetically, it's my favorite thing. Another thing that we'll use them for, that I think they can be really good for, is both shade and structure. So, like this, if I had a patch of lettuce or something over here or on one side of them, this could be a really good option to plant in between beds of lettuce just to get a little extra shade. Also for stuff in the middle of the summer, to have these sort of towering over like tomato plants, that can help them in the late afternoon when they need to be putting on flowers and maybe cooling down a bit. Especially right now when I'm shooting this is actually in the heat dome, which is super fun. But yes, also like in terms of structure, having the beans be able to grow up them like in the milpa patch, which you can go look at real quick. But having beans be able to grow up them is also extremely handy in that case. So you wouldn't, if you're not a big corn eater or something, and you just wanted something like a milpa patch, or you wanted some structure for your climbing beans, then you can have, sunflowers and then have these beans. And then in the fall, you're picking off all the beans, you're picking the sunflowers for the seeds, you're picking the popcorn for the popcorn, and so on and so forth, depending on what you planted in your milpa patch. And you could also do something like okra to have the okra seeds, and then also obviously fresh okra. Oh, here's some ants farming some aphids, jerks. It's still pretty cool to see that though. Anyway, I think that's it on sunflowers for the moment. I'll do a whole breakdown on how to do cut flowers versus, growing them for seed or growing them for seed oils and all that stuff that you can do. What are your thoughts on sunflowers? Let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to jump back to me recording in my office. Yeah, thanks for watching.
Counting corners till we get to any place but where I'm at.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that little sunflower fest, and otherwise, I think that's it for this Feedback Friday. Don't forget, No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. All you have to do is like it or follow it. It's just like a click on the screen. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production, help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in this month of July, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Copper Owl Regenerative and Holly and Dwight Yoder. Shouts to all of you. You are amazing, and you keep our story going this week. So, as you will remember, our heroine this week is Eliza, a grape tomato breeder, specifically a grape tomato. She wants to make sure that's understood because she's trying to put grape tomatoes on the map. And one night, she inadvertently spills a little bit of really nice natural wine on a plant. And the next morning, a group of, I don't know, let's call them worshipers, admirers. She doesn't really know, but they show up. They're kind of gathered around the plant. It's not clear. So why? So she asks this random collection of strangers who at the moment seem to be sort of meditating in front of the plant. Hey, what are you all doing on my property and in my garden? And one of the men turns to her and he holds his finger up to his lips as if to say, shh. And then he says, look, it's hatching. Sure enough, one of her grape tomatoes starts to sort of move and shake on the vine. And then just like that, out of the grape tomato pops a beautiful, glowing, lovely, ripe cherry tomato. And he hands it to Eliza and she tries it and it's absolutely delicious. And he says, we've waited our whole lives for this. We've been waiting for this plant, but because you grew it, you can have the first. And all Eliza can think as she eats the most delicious tomato she's ever eaten, she thinks, well, this story just got quite the cherry on top. That's it. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you Monday. Bye.